Sometimes, a single decision made on a rainy morning can turn your entire life around. This is a story about how simple human kindness opened a door where it was least expected, about how giving up easy money led to true wealth, and about how the most important interviews don't happen in offices, but on a broken road under pouring rain. The truck shuddered from a clap of thunder, and the rain seemed to double its strength. Noah Carter gripped the steering wheel tighter, peering into the blurred space beyond the windshield. The wipers were on maximum speed, but were barely coping. Water poured down in a solid wall, turning the road into something resembling a river. A glance at the clock made him swallow nervously. He had just 12 minutes until the interview, and the city was still a good 15 kilometers away. The phone on the dashboard vibrated. A reminder for the meeting. Interview at Dalton Tech, 2 p.m. Do not be late. Read the message he had set for himself a week ago. It had seemed like an unnecessary precaution then. Now it felt like bitter irony. He slowed down on a turn, and that's when his gaze caught something unusual. About 50 meters from the road, at the edge of a flooded field, stood a black sedan. Expensive, judging by the silhouette, maybe a BMW or Mercedes. The car was clearly stuck in the mud, and next to it, a figure in a light coat was pacing frantically. The rational part of his mind whispered, "Drive on. You have an interview. This job is your only chance." But his hands were already turning the wheel to the left, steering the old Ford toward the shoulder. Noah killed the engine and got out. The rain immediately doused him with an icy wave, soaking his shirt through in a matter of seconds. He shielded his eyes with his hand and ran toward the sedan, jumping over puddles. A woman stood by the car, trying to pull her foot out of the soggy ground. Her gray coat, clearly expensive, was stained with mud almost up to the knee. The heel of her right shoe was hopelessly stuck in the liquid mass, and every attempt to free herself only made it worse. "I need help," she shouted when she saw Noah. Her voice held a mix of irritation and desperation. This stupid pothole came out of nowhere. Noah silently crouched next to her foot. The heel was indeed stuck fast. The mud had almost completely swallowed it. He carefully took hold of the shoe and began to rock it from side to side, gradually widening the hole. "Try to pull your foot out," he said without looking up. "On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. The woman jerked her foot upward, and the heel finally gave way. She lost her balance and grabbed Noah's shoulder to keep from falling. "Thank you," she exhaled, looking at her ruined shoe. "I thought I'd have to walk barefoot." Noah was already circling the sedan, assessing the situation. The car was seriously stuck. The rear axle was almost completely sunk into the softened earth. It wouldn't get out without help. "Do you have a shovel?" he asked. "A shovel?" The woman looked at him as if he had suggested she build a spaceship. "Why would I have a shovel?" Noah shook his head and headed to his truck. Under a wet tarp in the bed were chains, a tow rope, and a small, entrenching shovel leftovers from his previous job in construction. He grabbed the necessary gear and returned to the sedan. "Get in the car," he told the woman. "Start the engine and wait for my signal." The next 10 minutes, Noah spent digging mud from around the wheels and securing the tow rope. The rain didn't let up, turning an already difficult job into a real challenge. Mud stuck to his hands, clogged under his nails, but he kept working with methodical persistence. Finally, everything was ready. Noah started his truck, put it in gear, and slowly began to tighten the rope. The old Ford roared, its wheels spinning on the wet asphalt before finding traction. The sedan jerked and slowly, inch by inch, began to extricate itself from the mud trap. When the car was finally on solid ground, Noah quickly unhooked the rope and coiled it up. There was no time for pleasantries. The clock showed 1:45. It was still a 20-minute drive to the city, with luck and without traffic. "Wait," the woman called out, getting out of the sedan. "I have to thank you." She reached into her purse and pulled out a wallet. Noah saw a stack of bills and raised his hand. "Not necessary," he said, heading to his truck. "Just be more careful on the roads." "But I insist," she called after him. "You spent your time, you got wet." "I have a job interview," Noah tossed over his shoulder, already getting behind the wheel. "I'm already late." He started the engine and sped off, leaving the woman standing in the rain with money in her hand. In the rearview mirror, he saw her watching him go, but there was no time to think about that. The main thing now was to get to the city and at least try to make it to the interview. The road to the city turned into a complete nightmare. The downpour had caused traffic jams. Several cars had slid into ditches. At one intersection, the traffic lights were out. Noah nervously drummed his fingers on the wheel, watching the clock's hand crawl slowly. 2:01 p.m., 2:15 p.m., 2:20 p.m. When he finally parked near the Dalton Tech Office Center, the time was 2:35 p.m., 35 minutes late for the most important interview of his life. The glass doors of the office center reflected Noah's soaked figure as he burst into the lobby. Water dripped from his jacket onto the marble floor, leaving dirty streaks. A security guard at the desk watched him with a puzzled look. "I need to get to Dalton Tech," Noah breathed out, running toward the elevator. 14th floor. The elevator seemed to take an eternity to ascend. Noah tried to tidy himself up, wiped his face with his sleeve, smoothed his wet hair. But he knew he looked terrible. In the reflection of the mirrored doors, he saw a man who looked more suited for a construction site than the office of a prestigious company. The 14th floor greeted him with silence and the smell of expensive coffee. Behind the reception desk sat a young woman in an impeccable suit, who looked up from her computer and barely contained her surprise. "Good afternoon," she said cautiously. "How can I help you, Noah Carter?" "I had an interview at 2 p.m. He tried to sound confident, but his voice betrayed him with a tremor. "I know I'm late, but if there's any possibility..." The girl quickly scanned something on the screen, and her face became sympathetic but firm. "Mr. Carter, yes, you are scheduled. Unfortunately, the HR manager waited for you until 2:15. She is currently interviewing another candidate. And when will she be free?" Noah felt everything inside him sink. "Maybe I can wait." "I'm afraid not. After this candidate, she has 2 more, and then a meeting with management." The receptionist clearly felt sorry for him, but rules were rules. "I can suggest you apply again in 6 months. 6 months. The words sounded like a sentence. Noah knew his situation better than anyone. He had just over $300 left in his account. The rent was a week overdue, and his son needed money for school supplies. 6 months without a job meant disaster. "I understand," he said quietly. "Thank you for your time." "I'm very sorry," the girl said sincerely. "If you'd like, I can take your details in case something comes up sooner." Noah shook his head. He knew it was just a polite formality. There were dozens like him, people without college degrees, without connections, with resumes consisting of a string of temporary gigs. Why would the company choose him? The ride down in the elevator felt even longer than the ride up. Noah stood watching the flashing floor numbers, trying to accept reality. This job had been his last hope. Good salary, official employment, growth prospects, everything he had dreamed of for the last 2 years, scraping by with odd jobs. Outside, the rain had eased slightly, but it didn't improve his mood. Noah walked slowly to his truck, thinking about how to explain to his son that Dad once again couldn't find a proper job. The boy was only 11, but he already understood that their family didn't live like everyone else. His phone vibrated. A message from his neighbor, who sometimes looked after Jacob after school. Jake is asking if he can go to the movies with his friends tomorrow. He says the ticket is $12. What should I say? $12. Before, it would have seemed like a small amount, but now Noah had to count every dollar. He typed a reply. Tell him I'll think about it, though he knew there was no money for movies. Reaching the truck, he got behind the wheel and just sat for a few minutes, staring into space. Maybe he should have driven past that woman. Maybe the interview was more important than helping a stranger. But even thinking about it, he knew he would have done the same thing. He couldn't leave a person in trouble, even if it cost him a job. He started the engine and slowly pulled out of the parking lot. He needed to think about the next step, look for other vacancies, maybe return to construction or loading docks, anything to make a living. Driving past a cafe, he saw people in business suits through the window, calmly drinking coffee and discussing projects. Just that morning, he had hoped to become one of them, a person with a steady job, a stable income, and confidence in the future. Now that dream seemed unattainable. The rain intensified again, and Noah turned on the wipers. Ahead was a long road home and an even longer search for new opportunities. But he wasn't going to give up. For his son, for the future, for that small chance that somewhere out there, his place was waiting for him. On the way out of the city, Noah's truck got stuck in traffic. The rain had turned the usually busy highway into a solid line of red brake lights. He drummed his fingers on the wheel, mentally calculating how much gas he had wasted on this hopeless trip. In the rearview mirror, a black SUV with tinted windows flashed by. The expensive car looked out of place in the stream of old sedans and beat-up hatchbacks. The driver seemed to be in a hurry, too. The SUV switched from lane to lane, trying to find a faster route. Noah was distracted from his thoughts when he heard a honk from behind. The black SUV had stopped right behind him, and the driver was flashing the headlights. Strange, there was plenty of room ahead to pass the old truck. The traffic finally started moving, but the SUV continued to follow Noah, not trying to overtake. After a few kilometers, it became obvious. He was being followed. But why? Noah couldn't remember cutting anyone off or breaking any rules. At a traffic light, the black SUV changed lanes and pulled up next to him. The tinted window slowly lowered, and Noah saw a familiar face. The woman he had pulled from the mud an hour ago was behind the wheel, only now she looked completely different. Her wet hair was neatly styled, her makeup flawless, and instead of the stained coat, she wore an elegant dark blue blazer. Even her expression had changed. Instead of helplessness and irritation, her eyes held the confidence of a successful person used to making decisions. "Mr. Carter," she called out, "could you pull over? I need to talk to you." Noah pointed questioningly to the shoulder, and she nodded. The light turned green, and both vehicles moved to the side of the road. The woman got out of the SUV, and Noah noticed she had managed to change her shoes. Instead of the ruined heels, she wore elegant loafers. "How do you know my name?" he asked, rolling down the window. "I've learned a lot in the last hour," she replied with a mysterious smile. "May I get in your truck? I have something to tell you." Noah nodded decisively, and the woman walked around the truck. Settling into the passenger seat, she looked around the worn interior without a trace of disdain, more with curiosity. "First, let me introduce myself properly," she said, extending her hand. "Claire Dalton, CEO of Dalton Tech." Noah felt the blood drain from his face. Dalton Tech, the very company he was late to interview with, because he was helping this woman. The irony of the situation was so absurd, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You, ... you're that Dalton," he finally breathed out. "The very one," she confirmed. "And I know you were late for an interview at my company today." Claire took a tablet from her bag and quickly scrolled through something. Noah Carter, 32 years old, experience in logistics and warehousing, currently unemployed, lives with his 11-year-old son, Jacob. References from previous jobs are excellent, but lacks formal education for most vacancies. "How do you know all this?" Noah was in shock at how quickly she had gathered information about him. "I have good assistants," Claire smiled, "but mainly, your resume has been on my desk for a week. I personally selected you from 70 applicants for the logistics coordinator position, but your HR department," Noah began. "My HR department thinks you're too rough around the edges for our corporate culture," Claire interrupted. Quote, literally, "in their opinion. A person without a university degree is not suitable for working with our clients." Noah gave a bitter smile. He'd heard similar phrasing before. A polite way of saying, "you're not from their circle." "But I prefer to judge people by their actions, not their papers," Claire continued. "And this morning, I saw how you operate in a crisis. While I was panicking, you took control, solved the problem quickly and efficiently, and refuse money, even though you clearly need it." "I just helped someone in trouble," Noah shrugged. "Anyone would have done the same." "No, not anyone," Claire said, a note of bitterness in her voice. "Believe me, I know. Over the last 10 years, I've met plenty of people who would have driven by or demanded payment up front." She paused, looking out the window at the cars rushing by. "You were late for your interview because you were helping me. It turns out I owe you more than dry shoes. I owe you a chance." "What chance?" Noah asked cautiously. "Your employees said the next interview would only be in 6 months. What if I told you I could offer you a chance to prove yourself right now?" Claire turned to him, and an excited glint appeared in her eyes. "Not in 6 months, not tomorrow, today." The Dalton Tech office was buzzing like a disturbed beehive. Employees walked quickly through the corridors with grim faces. Raised voices could be heard from conference rooms, and phones rang non-stop. Claire led Noah through this chaos, nodding to people she passed, but not stopping to explain. "What's going on here?" Noah asked, noticing one manager talking on 2 phones at once, looking nervous. "A nightmare," Claire replied shortly. "Our shipment tracking system completely crashed this morning. We've lost control of cargo in 6 states." She led him into a large hall where a dozen programmers and logisticians sat at computers. A huge screen on the wall showed a map of the USA, dotted with red points. Each one meant a lost shipment. "How much are we losing?" Noah studied the map with professional interest. "Preliminary estimates are around $8 million if we don't regain control within the next 24 hours, said Claire, "plus reputational damage, Some clients are already threatening to break contracts. A middle-aged man in a wrinkled shirt, clearly the head of IT, approached them. He had the expression of someone who hadn't slept all night. "Claire, I've explained it 10 times. We need at least a week to restore the system architecture," he said tiredly. "We can try temporary fixes, but they'll work at half capacity at best." "David, this is Noah Carter," Claire introduced him. "He's a logistics specialist. Perhaps he has some ideas." David looked Noah over skeptically. The wet jacket and jeans clearly didn't add any authority. "With all due respect, this is a technical problem," he said. 3 servers crashed simultaneously. The database is corrupted. We can't do this without programmers. Noah walked over to one of the computers and asked to see the system schematic. The programmer reluctantly gave up his seat, clearly considering it a waste of time. "Can I see the error logs?" Noah asked, studying the diagrams on the screen. "Here," David waved toward a printout. "Just don't say we didn't try to explain." Noah delved into the documents, schematics, error codes, timestamps. It all formed a certain picture. He had worked with similar systems at previous jobs, and something about this breakdown seemed strange. "This isn't a server crash," he said after 20 minutes. "The servers are running fine. The problem is in data synchronization between nodes." "What do you mean?" David frowned. "Look." Noah pointed to the timestamps in the logs. "The system is trying to update the same record from 3 different sources simultaneously. A conflict arises, and it locks the entire process."
"But that's impossible," objected one of the programmers. "We have safeguards against that. They were there until last night's update." Noah pointed to a line in the log. "See, the new algorithm version launched at 2 a.m. That's when the first failures started." Silence fell in the room. Everyone looked at Noah in surprise. The man who had come in off the street had understood in 20 minutes what they had been struggling with for 8 hours. "Even if you're right," David said slowly, "how do we fix it? Rolling back to the previous version will take at least 2 days. What if we don't roll back?" Noah was already drawing something on a whiteboard. "We can change the request processing priorities. Instead of simultaneous synchronization, make it sequential. Temporarily, of course, but it will restore functionality." The next 40 minutes passed in a feverish work session. Noah explained his idea to the programmers. They made changes to the code, tested, and corrected errors. Claire stood nearby, watching as her company slowly came back to life. "Try it now," Noah said when the last lines of code were entered. A programmer pressed the launch button, and everyone held their breath. For a few seconds, loading messages flashed across the screens, and then the system came alive. The red dots on the map began to change color to yellow, then to green. "It's working," David exhaled. "My God, it's actually working." Applause broke out in the room. The people who half an hour ago had considered Noah a random visitor now looked at him with respect and gratitude. He had saved their jobs, the company's reputation, and possibly several $1,000,000. Claire Dalton's office was on the 20th floor with windows overlooking the entire city. The rain had finally stopped, and the first rays of sun broke through the clouds, painting the wet roofs golden. Noah stood by the panoramic window, still not believing what was happening. "Please, have a seat." Claire indicated a chair opposite her desk. "We need to talk." On the desk lay a thick folder with the company logo, and next to it, a contract printed on expensive paper. Claire poured 2 glasses of water and sat down opposite him. "In the last 2 hours, you've done what our in-house specialists couldn't do in a whole day," she began. "David admitted that without your help, we would have lost at least a week and several major clients. I just got lucky and noticed what others missed," Noah replied modestly. "Sometimes a fresh perspective helps." "That's not luck, that's professionalism," Claire stated firmly. "You saw the problem where others only saw the consequence, analyzed the situation, proposed a solution, and saw it through to the result. Exactly the kind of people my company needs." She slid the contract closer to Noah. "I'm offering you the position of head of the logistics department. The salary will be $120,000 a year. Full benefits package, medical insurance for you and your son, plus performance bonuses. Noah looked at the numbers in the contract and felt dizzy. $120,000 a year. That was more than he had earned in 3 years from all his temporary jobs combined. But why? He asked. You don't really know me. How can you be sure I'll handle it? Because I've seen how you work. Claire leaned back in her chair. This morning, in the mud and the rain, you showed me 3 important things. First, you're willing to help even when it's not in your interest. Second, you don't give up in the face of difficulties. Third, you refused easy money, which means you have principles. She paused, looking out the window at the city slowly lighting up in the afternoon sun. You know, in 10 years of running this company, I've met hundreds of people with brilliant resumes and recommendations, but most of them only think about themselves. They are ready to undermine a colleague for a promotion or deceive a client for profit. And you were late for the most important interview of your life because you helped a stranger. What if I disappoint you? Noah still couldn't believe the reality of what was happening. Then I was mistaken. And we'll part ways, Claire replied simply. But I'm willing to take that risk. The question is, are you? Noah took the pen and signed the contract. His hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from excitement. For the first time in many years, he felt that his life could change for the better dramatically. When do I start? He asked. Tomorrow morning, Claire smiled. You'll have a team of 12 people and a heap of problems to solve. But after today, I'm confident you'll handle it. Leaving the office, Noah felt like he was in a dream. A signed contract was in his pocket, and plans for the future swarmed in his head. He could rent a better apartment for himself and Jacob, pay for a good school for his son, finally stop counting every dollar. Outside, the rain clouds had completely parted, and the city bathed in warm sunlight. Noah got into his old truck. Tomorrow he'd have to think about a new car, more suitable for the head of a department in a large company. Starting the engine, he remembered the morning of that day. He had been driving to the interview with little hope, accustomed to rejections and disappointments. Now he was returning home with his dream job, which he had gotten in the most unexpected way. His phone vibrated. A message from the neighbor. Jake still wants to go to the movies. What's the decision? Noah smiled and typed a reply. Tell him he can go, and not just to the movies. He can buy popcorn too. Dad got very lucky today. The road home seemed shorter than usual. Ahead of him was his son, whom he could tell that their life would finally change, that there would be no more endless job searches, rejections, and financial problems. That one act of kindness on a rainy morning had opened the door to a future he hadn't even dared to dream of. And most importantly, he understood that he would never regret the decision to stop and help a stranger, because sometimes the most important opportunities don't come when you expect them, but when you do what your heart tells you to do.